And hopefully the clicker works well. So my name is Ludovic Ulrich. I joined 3 years ago Salesforce to basically build some different programs to engage with the startup ecosystem at scale and make sure that Salesforce growing as a company internationally as well from a product standpoint, we can explain to the startup audience or let's say ISV audience all the benefits they can get from Salesforce. We do many things with startups. We incubate, of course. We'll talk about that today. We invest. We have the App Exchange program. We have a bunch of great products that startups can use. So the idea is like to make it bite-sized and get the startup community globally to understand that Salesforce is in the landscape, if you will. So, and I have two of my colleagues who will introduce themselves, but a little bit later in the presentation, who represents Diffeo and MadKudu, two of the incubator companies. Just a few words about the incubator. And before I start, who in the room is a developer? Okay, an admin? All right, any entrepreneurs or starting something on the side or full-time maybe? Okay, a few, okay, cool. So maybe you'll move from category 1 and 2 to category 3 at the end of the presentation if you're inspired. So a few words about the incubator, but before I start, by nature, the incubator is about the future, so we might make some forward-looking statement and talk about technologies that are not available today, whether it's Salesforce or my colleagues from the incubator companies, so don't make any purchase decision based on this. You heard this before. I see some smiles in the back. You're used to that one. So first of all, this is the mission we're on, right? We are trying to build this ecosystem, the App Exchange ecosystem, right? We are Trailhead DX. It's a Salesforce conference, so I'm assuming a lot of you are pretty familiar with the platform. You're probably friendly with Salesforce, you understand that, but that's kind of what we're trying to build together. We're trying to build that ecosystem. You heard about the Salesforce economy yesterday in the keynote. We're trying to get to a massive ecosystem, and as you can tell, we started in 2006 with the first, the launch of the App Exchange, the marketplace. We're growing. You recognize a lot of those logos. We became massive companies. Some went IPOs, some got acquired. So we basically, the goal here is to be bigger together because our customers expect more innovation from us, but from the ecosystem around us. So there's a large demand from our customers, so we want to make sure we foster that ecosystem of innovation around us. And we do that in different ways, and one of the latest ways we want to do that is through the incubator that Mark Benioff actually announced exactly a year ago at Trailhead DX, the first edition. It was a year back, so we already graduated the first class. We have the second class with some members of it, and we're recruiting for third class right now. So what's the Salesforce Incubator? Who has heard about it before the session? A few of you guys? Okay, cool. So what we're trying to do with the incubator, and you have Mike, who is the managing director of the incubator, so feel free to ask him questions. He's there every day helping those companies succeed. It's a pretty intense 5-month program, physically located in San Francisco, down in Soma. We have a beautiful office next to the Heroku, Steelbrick, and some of the Einstein team, and a massive network of SaaS advisors and mentors. Some are internal employees, product people, product management, some are external, that we basically, and we craft a programming to help the companies, the 13 companies, to basically build something innovative with our platform. Usually they're not super early stage, they already have what looks like a product, what looks like a team, sometimes customers, etc., and we want to accelerate their trajectory. One of the interesting things as well is we don't take equity. We don't necessarily invest in those companies. That may or may not happen at the end of the program. It's really focused on the technology. So we're here at the developer conference today. It's really focused on building technology. And of course, we're going to get into more of the go-to-market, etc., but it's really what it's all about. On top of it, for those of you, who are based in San Francisco, we do a lot of events, usually one public event every month where we try to gather the community and really create the center of gravity around Salesforce in San Francisco and make sure that there is some exchanges between you guys and those companies. The current batch is focused on Einstein. I think you heard about it probably at the conference before. So they're innovating with AI and with the Einstein platform across the board. Very quickly, that's the kind of results we see at the end. We look at all those metrics and KPIs as success. Frankly, we're really trying to build the ecosystem. That's what I started at the beginning. If those companies, if those gentlemen end up raising funds and gaining more customers or hiring people, that's great. We really want to help them, grow their business. That was kind of the results for batch 1. And so because the session, you want to take a picture? I can go back. Because the session, before I hand it over to to Jason and Francis was about the behind the scene. A lot of people actually at the booth yesterday asked us, okay, what do you actually do in this incubator? So we have actually a pretty precise schedule of things that we're doing. Week by week, we have a pretty dense onboarding week. But that's kind of more or less the program we're talking about here. And we are consolidating, frankly, a lot of resources that you can find online, whether it's on the App Exchange resources, on the partner community, on some of the developer community, on Trailhead. But we're consolidating that and delivering that in a pretty bespoke way with those companies over the course of the 5 months. What's pretty neat about batch 2 is that it's going to finish a month before Dreamforce. So it's kind of a nice carrot for our team and for the incubator companies to try to build some cool demos, some cool features, some cool extension of the solution that they had already when it started, and have an opportunity maybe to show that in some session at Dreamforce, right? Which, in my opinion, is as valuable, if not valuable, than a demo day with investor, which you traditionally find in those accelerators and incubators around the world, right? So if you look at this, we start with a lot of technical content, and then as we get closer to the end of the program, we try to maybe help with some of the things that you would expect from Salesforce in terms of go-to-market, selling, marketing, et cetera, et cetera. But again, it's very focused on technical. And it goes without saying that most of those companies will probably get to list their application or the new version of their application or the extension that includes the Salesforce connection on the App Exchange at the end of the program, which is kind of a good North Star to keep on track and deliver in that 5 months period. With that, I will just finish with this slide. So this is the logos that you'll find on the website of all the companies. They're rotating on the Startup Valley, so don't have time to go about, to tell you about what they're doing, all of them, but we have, most of them are here today. So if you're interested, it's easy to find some details and feel free to meet them. So we're lucky today to have, as I said, Diffeo and MadKudu represented on the panel. So we'll hear about them. So before I move on, if you need to have more information about App Exchange, we just released this new page, join App Exchange. So again, in case we inspire you to go through that journey, join that ecosystem as an app builder, as an ISV, as a startup, whatever you want to call it, check that out. And also, it's actually a good timing because we're also recruiting. We just opened application for batch 3 of the incubator. That's going to start the week before Dreamforce, basically. We just had, on top of Platform and Einstein, another kind of filter, if you will, just to be a little bit more focused, which is focused on industry verticals. So if you plan to build something or you have friends and family building something in a retail, healthcare, or financial services, by all means, check the application or come talk to me or Mike at the end of the session. Okay, I went a little bit too long, so I'm going to keep moving. Francis is one of the co-founders of MadKudu. They're based in Mountain View. They now work out of the incubator. They have amazing technology. Their team is extremely technical. So again, if he doesn't cover things that you want to know, feel free to grab him after. Francis.
All right. Thank you, Ludo. So yeah, as Ludo mentioned, I'm Francis. I'm a co-founder of MadKudu. I've been building predictive analytics models for the enterprise for slightly over 10 years. So started with a background in fundamental mathematics, and then as I moved to the Valley from France, started building models for the enterprise. And it's been really interesting to see the shift in how machine learning AI has evolved from a messaging standpoint, but also from an actual deliverable and delivery capability standpoint. One of the things that I'll cover real quickly. So MadKudu, we're predictive analytics for B2B enterprise. Essentially what we do is we capture and ingest all of the first-party data from companies, enrich it with third-party data to then run machine learning models on top of it and provide recommendations into the different execution platforms. One of them, of course, being Salesforce. So we work with companies like Atlassian, Segment, where they have a lot of user-generated data, and it's really hard to go and identify which are the meaningful aggregations and being able to push them into the CRM so that the reps know what to look for. And so essentially kind of explaining how we work with Einstein, what we've been seeing, kind of the trend overall, is that the ability to run machine learning algorithms is now becoming a commodity, and we're seeing tons of different platforms that enable you to spin up systems that can run these models. Like Prediction.io being acquired by Salesforce was an amazing example of Salesforce seeing this need to be able to run algorithms really easily, and now Einstein having these out-of-the-box models that were demoed yesterday at the keynote were a great other example of how easy it is today for the enterprise to run models. But really the part that I've seen over the years is that what's really hard in building machine learning models is realizing that machine learning is a component of data science, which really includes 3 components. It's preparing data, running some computation, and then serving the data. And so the part that's been really commoditized is the computation, but the preparation of the data today is still very complicated. And so that's one of the big things that we're working with the Einstein team on is we're aggregating all of this first-party data, figuring out what are the relevant features to generate to then push into the Einstein AI and machine learning models so that then those can be served into the platform. So we're still solving this initial component that is really hard and very industry specific to go and identify which are the data points that need to be aggregated in which manner and then presented to the machine learning algorithms. And so I just listed some examples, but one of the ones that I think is really telling is if you're trying to predict, let's say, the lead score and you want to use a feature like zip code. Zip code is a very sparse, it's very sparse data in its sense, right? You don't have that many companies within a given zip code. But then if you extract from zip code the price per square foot of office space, and now you rank it into deciles, you now have information that is very rich in predictability of how much revenue and how much budget a company typically has. And so while that's not something that is directly offered by a machine learning model, that's the component of feature generation and preparation of the data to then feed into a regression type model that can be very powerful. So that's how we're working with the Einstein team. And within the incubator, we've been getting access to the teams internally. We've been looking at pushing through the app exchange from a go-to-market standpoint, and that's been super helpful for us.
Great. So I guess one of the highlights I would say is that, as you can see, Einstein got announced, at Dreamforce. There's a lot going on. There's a lot of services being available. I think those guys have the opportunity to play with the technology, but it's real, right? It's happening. They're implementing that into their apps. We're not talking about lab technology. We also have Salesforce Research, where there's definitely some aspects of lab research, but it's basically being applied as we speak by those companies to hopefully be commercially available, by in the next few months. So thanks a lot, Francis. So I think now we have Jason. So it's totally different concept. I think Jason flew yesterday or the day before from the East Coast. So they're based in Boston, and they joined the incubator from a totally different angle. As you might know, we acquired a company called Quip. How many of you are using Quip? Only a few, okay. So maybe with Diffeo, you'll be even more tempted to give it a try. And so Jason, why don't you tell us a little bit more about Diffeo and what you're building together with Quip?
Great. Where do I point this thing?
To the computer. Oh, the red thing. Like
Central
this.
button?
No,
next.
this one. Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Hey, how's it going? I'm Jason from Diffeo, as was mentioned. And the problem we're trying to solve is that there's so much content out there in your Salesforce org, across the web, in your Google Drive, in your Dropbox, in your Quip account. And oftentimes it's hard to find what you're looking for, let alone the things you didn't even know you were missing. So we've built this a platform that we call Diffeo, the Diffeo AI-powered research assistant, which basically connects to your workflow. So here I'm working in Microsoft OneNote, and I've got my browser open. So the agent, the assistant, knows what I'm writing, and it knows what I'm reading. It uses that to understand what I know and what I don't know about my topic of concern. So as I'm writing, the system is going out and figuring out what I don't know about what I've currently written, uses what I don't know to go out and search the web, my email, my Salesforce account, all the different places of content that exist across my org, and bring me the best pieces of content, the best connections, the best things that I'm missing in a sidebar on the right-hand side. So I'm just working as I usually would, and I'm getting updates from this assistant telling me what I should be focusing on and where the best content is to kind of fill in the knowledge gaps about what I'm working on right now. When I open up one of those recommendations, I get the assistant goes into I'm in the browser, and it's doing highlighting on that result based on what I've already written so far. So in yellow, we have the core concepts, things I should really pay attention to. In blue are things I've already included in my document or I've already explored on the web. And in red are entities that I have not yet encountered in my exploration. So the assistant's telling me, hey, focus on this. You haven't yet encountered this. Pay attention if you can. So it's kind of pointing out the most important things that you should focus on in your content. Finally, in the background, I'll say that if this was a helpful piece of content, you can copy, paste it into your doc. That trains the assistant and says, hey, that was a really helpful piece of content. Let's go find more, which trains the sidebar. It gets better and better as you're working. It's using all your micro interactions, using machine learning on those to improve the recommendations you get and to be sort of a collaborator, an assistant while you work. And in the background, it's building a dense knowledge map of all the different things that you know and what you don't know, and shows you sort of a mind into the Diffeo assistant, a picture into the brain of the assistant. So that's what we've been building. We've been building that for a while. We have a lot of awesome customers. Why did we apply to the incubator? We're exploring some new verticals, particularly finance and sales. And the Salesforce ecosystem is so massive, and they've got so many interesting customers in every possible vertical that it was a natural fit for us to pair our exploration with being in this incubator and getting the access to a lot of their teams and customers and all the awesome things that come along with the incubator. Salesforce Einstein is doing a lot of very similar things to building a lot of technology that can really be helpful to us as we build out this assistant platform. And the idea across the board is that Diffeo Assistant should be able to collaborate with you wherever you are, whether you're in Google Drive, Quip, Microsoft Office, Salesforce proper. And given that Salesforce is such a massive ecosystem, they've got so many customers, so many users, it's a perfect next step after Microsoft Office for us to go and integrate with Salesforce. So just to bring it back to a cheesy picture from our application, we did this, Einstein leading the way, and then Diffeo is helping connect all the different apps together, Quip at the end there. So how it's going so far is all the things that we hoped for are coming true. We've had amazing opportunities to connect to all different types of Salesforce teams, product teams, customer-facing teams, at Einstein, Salesforce IQ, Sales Cloud, and particularly Quip. Working with them to build integrations with our assistant, and just the amount of access we've been given, and the excitement of the teams in working with us has been really spectacular, sort of surprising, honestly, and we didn't even expect to have such an awesome experience. And working with some really great Einstein tech, as Ludo and Francis mentioned, there's a lot of cool stuff in the pipeline, and we've had sort of a first look at that. For us in particular, we're interested in the Einstein recommended connections, the sentiment API, and the different bot platforms that are coming out. And this is what we're building as part of the incubator, is taking that Microsoft Office experience you saw earlier and building that into the core Salesforce flow. So this is an entity record page. Here's Diffeo, right? And it's a Lightning component in Salesforce proper, which is giving you these recommendations and feeding the highlights that you're getting in your browser as well. So you can see the power is it's giving you related entity recommendations, recommended content, all the things that will fill in your knowledge gaps, coming from not only Salesforce, but all the different places where you might have content that would be interesting to your topic at hand.
Cool. So, do you have the mic? Cool, great, thanks. I guess we're open for Q&A. The idea was we wanted to give you kind of an overview about the incubator, what it is. I think you got two very short and concise kind of explanation of why why it could be good for those companies to join that ecosystem. I think I heard the word ecosystem a few times from you guys, above and beyond the technology, and what they're building. But any question from you? Yeah. So, give me this.
It seems like there's a pretty big divide between kind of more services-oriented versus product-oriented. Can you guys kind of talk what you guys saw in the incubator, coming from both sides of that, and kind of generally what goes on in the incubator in terms of services versus product companies?
Yeah, so I can take that one. Those two represent, basically product companies, of course. We tried for the first batch actually to have some services company. We happen to have a great interactions between the two in terms of, especially at the end of the program when it started to go to market. That said, it can happen early in the program. I was just being told by Mike that there is actually two of the companies, one of the SI and one of the product companies, who want to deal together already after a month and a half in there. So I think there is some nice synergy. That said, the incubator is really focused on product companies, right? So having an SI, especially in the case of NeuroFlash for this current batch, they happen to have made a big commitment on AI in general, Einstein in particular, and they're building some products and stuff. But again, it's more of a product incubator. That's kind of the way we think about it. One of the secret ingredients as well, and they might actually give some color to that, is include what we call a PDO, product development outsourcer. Those are specific services companies who help build products for a lot of App Exchange partners. So we included a company called Code Science in the first batch. Another company called CRM Science is actually the PDO in residence for this current batch. They're actually at the booth and might have someone from the team here. I don't know. So it helps us as well, basically help those companies where we can go, right, ourselves, like in terms of, touching the codes and do some, some of the things that our own engineering team cannot do directly. But I think keep in mind, yeah, the incubator is here to help get a product from A to B. Cool. Any other question? Yep.
Yeah, with Diffeo, what sort of industry verticals have you seen pick up on the technology so far?
Back to you. Here we go.
So our initial customers are all in the public sector, so different government analysts and things like that. But as part of this incubator, we've been trying to push into both finance and consulting, which are two verticals that care deeply about entities, the connections between them, and getting access to this deep knowledge that they have all across their organization. A lot of the hedge funds I've talked to, they've got these internal databases, knowledge stores of 20, 30 years worth of notes they've been taking, different pitch decks they've created, different company overviews that is unsearchable and is kind of just wasted there. It's the whole knowledge of the company for the last many years, but it's just wasted on a server somewhere. We're able to go in and take that and feed it to users in their existing workflows. And so finance and consulting are probably the most compelling, but across the board, I mean, everyone has a workflow and is knowledge workers at least need access to the best information, and what we're trying to do is cut out the intermediate step of searching and go onto this portal and go into Google and then go into the internal search portal and then go into Google Drive and then your email and doing all these different searches and automate that so that analysts can spend much more time focused on actual analysis instead of content gathering. But it's been finance and consulting are the most promising so far. Thank you.
What does a successful application look like, maybe in 5 key points? Just something simple.
So I want some great founders like this, I guess. No, it's a good question. So what we're looking at, you've seen those two examples. We're looking at companies who can really accomplish something very, very clear over the course of the 5 months, right? So it sounds kind of a weird way to answer the question, but we're not necessarily thinking like, as investors or anything like this, because it's not the point. It's really helping companies build something great, leveraging the technology. For this batch, it was pretty clear. Einstein has some great use cases, especially at the time when we opened application back in November last year. We didn't know all the things that we know today, as you know, like this is a new offering. We're integrating a lot of acquisition, a lot of IP into our roadmap. And so it's really about the use case. Of course, we're looking at some Salesforce DNA and making sure that there is the ability in the team to actually build something. That said, we also try to avoid having only companies, made out of, and big respect to MVPs, but only MVPs and people who know Salesforce in and out. I think we have a few, and if you look at the current batch, as you guys know, we have a few companies who actually are extremely good at Salesforce. They've been in the ecosystem in the Ohana for a while, but trying also to get some companies who are more in discovery mode, right? They probably sometimes come from an Heroku background, right? You guys were using Heroku, etc., but maybe want to discover more the force.com aspect, how to leverage Einstein. It's kind of a good excuse to recruit there. In terms of stage, we're stage agnostic, but we realize it's good to take companies who are pretty early stage, but we still have the time to dedicate resources to that, to that experiment, basically, for 5 months. So, and we also require the company to be based in San Francisco for the duration of the program. Any other question? Yes, in the back.
So having access to the technology is awesome, but what have you learned about the business of selling apps on the App Exchange, and how has the incubator helped?
So maybe they can extrapolate, but they're still early in that process. But I'm sure Francis has a good answer.
Yeah, no, it's so one of the reasons why we joined the incubator was actually having Salesforce help us on the go-to-market, and particularly with respects to getting to the App Exchange. We've been fortunate to have office hours with people from the App Exchange, so it's been very helpful to get almost kind of a fast lane into the App Exchange and have access to resources that are either directly tied to the App Exchange or people that have experience with going live on the App Exchange to give us some of the best practices and understanding what are the best ways to promote your app there, and what are some of the things to look out for to go quickly on the App Exchange. So it's been very helpful from a process standpoint, but also from an understanding of how do we then market the application within the App Exchange.
Cool. So any question on the technology? I think one of the goals of this session, we had a sister session yesterday, which was more about some of the companies in the incubator who actually already have something. They were already working on it, and in the first 2 months of the incubator, they actually have something commercially available that is like, basically being used. And the point is like AI is not the future; it's today. I think with you two, you already had some intelligence into your existing application, but they're in the process of using those Einstein services that you may or may not have seen yesterday in the keynote. So any question about maybe the way they're using them, or any? Not necessarily. Maybe you can share a little bit about some of the services that you've been using so far.
Sure. I think it's very similar to what I was mentioning during the presentation, where I liked your question about like services versus pure product. I think the part that, I guess what I was saying in the presentation is that there's like this preparation of the data, which is actually the product that we're building. And I guess it speaks also to the different stages of the companies. I think you guys have been going on for a bit longer than we have, so we're still early in the process of building the company. And we graduated from Techstars slightly under 2 years ago. So it's really pretty early on in the process, and it's figuring out how do you automatically go and mine all of this rich data to then feed it into the platform. And I think so initially we started building our own machine learning models and all of that, which is at the end of the day it's not where you have your 10x as a founder, even though we can write complex machine learning algorithms. It doesn't really, that's not where you're going to add the most value. So that's why we're starting to slowly switch into having the models run on top of Salesforce, just because they're there, and we can now help all the admins or the developers have access to rich and valuable data to train their algorithms into their platform that they can then leverage for other use cases that we're not necessarily involved with. So I think that for us is really, really interesting, because it also moves us away from the business of actually training models and then having to explain all the gain curves and all those components and how then you make them operational. So it's like working with all these different teams instead of having everything living in Salesforce directly.
Cool, yeah, and for us, we care deeply about the connections between people, companies, locations, events, and we don't really have a sales background at all, and being able to collaborate with the Einstein teams and Salesforce in general on how they look at, from a sales perspective, how people, companies, and locations are connected, and how they relate to one another is different from the more high-scale approach we've been taking so far in other verticals, to basically understand what features and what types of content make a good connection in a sales use case. Has been really helpful to work with their teams, because that's where Einstein's focused, right? That's the bread and butter, is how do we build the best machine learning for sales teams, and being able to collaborate with them on that has been really helpful. How we build that into our existing models, because we've come in, we've been working for 4.5 years so far, so we have a lot of our own models built, but being able to adapt them while working with the Einstein team has been awesome.
Actually, one last thing I wanted to add, that now that I think of it for those of you who were at the keynote yesterday, I thought one of the things that was really, to me as a startup founder was amazing, was to see that the demo was built on Postman, which is it's an application to run API calls directly. And it was amazing to see that they're basically, all these APIs have been bundled in a way that they can run outside of the platform. So one of the things that we've done when we started building lead scoring is that our lead score is available through API, and why that was really helpful for our customers is that they could then modify dynamically the behavior of the website or the way people were interacting with the product based on that lead score. And I think what's really amazing was this new version of the scoring and all these APIs that Einstein are making available is that now you can take this scoring capability, extract it completely from Salesforce, and then dynamically go and play with any application you have out there to actually change the behavior of the website. So for example, one of our use cases that one of the startups from the incubator started implementing is when someone signs up for a demo, if they're qualified, when they input their email, we score them in real time. If they're qualified, we directly pop up the calendar of the rep that's been assigned to them in Salesforce so that you don't have to go through the back and forth over email. So that's a product that we've built, but what's interesting is that now, with these APIs that are available, you can start building that, or you could say, if the lead is qualified, now trigger through API a chatbot, and then have the chatbot communicate with Einstein. So the fact that you have these APIs available mean that you can start building applications that rely on the Salesforce platform, but actually live outside of it, which I think unlocks a ton of possibilities in the B2B space.
Great. So I think we need to close the session. I'm just going to ask you a last question, back to my first question of who you are in the room. Sounds there's a lot of admins and developers. We didn't make necessarily decided to jump in and start a company. So maybe one advice, we usually do that in startup panels. What's your one advice? So I give you some time to think about it. One of the things I would say, it's true that talking to a lot of folks here in Silicon Valley, like there's no startup pitch that doesn't include AI. So it's kind of a baseline now, so you want to be careful about this. It's like you don't say your app is mobile anymore. So of course, it's kind of a no-brainer to do something smart and intelligent. So if it's only the scenario you want to build, you want to make sure you have something beyond this. That's what I'm trying to say. But yeah, so Francis, any advice for those of you who would like to maybe change their career and maybe jump in and try to get on the App Exchange?
It's a great question. I would say I like this idea that Salesforce is always saying that you put the customer first and put the customer at the center of everything. I think what's amazing with all these new commodities that we have around AI is that AI is no longer the core of the pitch. Is how do you use AI to actually make the customer experience better, and how do you put the customer back at the center of everything you're doing? So I think my advice would be don't focus on underlying technology, because most of the underlying technology that's out there is going to become a commodity. Focus on how are you making the end user experience better, and how can you easily prototype that with a lot of the commodities that are out there, and now Salesforce is one of them by making this AI easily available. So I think it's a huge opportunity to be able to disrupt on the user experience and not try to disrupt on the technology side.
Couldn't agree more.
One piece of advice that I like to always give people is ask everyone for help. You'd be surprised how many people are actually willing to help you out as a new startup founder, or as anyone, I guess, even if you're looking for a new job. I would not be sitting here for sure without hundreds of people, advisors, mentors, like former classmates, everyone who just is willing to help out and give back to the community, because everyone that's been through it knows how hard it is, but also has learned a lot and can help you, take a 6-month journey that you might have to go through to figure something out and tell it to you in one phone call. So just reach out to anyone you know who works in a startup or who has built like a product-focused company before, and use them as much as you can. We're in the Salesforce Incubator right now, massive companies helping us out. Everyone's willing to help if you just ask. And also the second piece of advice, I know I only asked for one, but second piece is come talk to us at the Startup Valley, because we can give you a lot more advice there.
You're stealing mine, On that note, again, start by asking help at the Valley. Thanks for coming, and tweet, share the application for the incubator. We want great applications. So if you have, again, folks who are in those vertical, healthcare, financial services, or retail, the definition of retail is pretty broad. By all means, have them apply. Thanks so much for attending. Thanks, you guys.